everyone. My name is Andronica Klaas and I am so excited to be your host for Discover E's 2021 Persist series. Through this monthly virtual speaker series for women in engineering and technology, we are sharing stories, navigating challenges together, and building a more welcoming and inclusive future for the field. Let's imagine tomorrow together. Let's go. Welcome to episode 5 of Discover E's 2021 Persist series, our monthly virtual speaker series connecting thousands of women across the world for uplifting conversations to help us persevere and thrive in engineering and technology careers. I'm excited to introduce you to today's speaker, Amy Winchester. Amy is a senior chemical engineer at CBCL, the leading multidisciplinary engineering and environmental consulting firm in Atlantic Canada. Amy is the firm's first female director and is heavily involved in diversity and professional development initiatives. But she also is a mom of 3 and has learned all of the many ways in which we can define and redefine what success looks like. Lastly, she adamantly believes that you don't have to choose between your career and your family. Let's hear her story.
I grew up in St. John, New Brunswick, which is a small city in Eastern Canada. Didn't really know what I wanted to do in the future. To be honest, growing up, my parents would tell you that I wanted to have kids. I wanted to be a mom. You know, when I was little, I think I used to tell them that I was going to own a bus and I was going to have lots and lots of kids. And so that was my focus. I wanted a family. That's what I wanted to do. My parents were very firm that we would all go to post-secondary education. Education was very important. So there's no question after high school that that's what I would then pursue. But the question was, what would I do? But in high school, as I started to learn more about what was out there, we had some engineers come to talk to our high school. So that was probably grade 11, and it caught my attention. So I started to learn more about engineering. And it turned out my uncle, who we're very close with them, he's an engineer. Again, I didn't really put 2 and 2 together growing up. But he was in charge of the water system in St. John. And from there, I spent a lot more time talking to him about the water system, which is where my love of water in general comes from. And he explained to me how the full water cycle. And so the more I learned about these processes, the more I developed my love for water and my love of engineering in general. I was so curious that I wanted to learn more. I also knew with my uncle, and the more I spent time through my engineering career, that he gave back a lot. He was involved with an organization called Water for People, which is a nonprofit organization that builds water systems in third world countries. Not only did I develop this interest in engineering and my love for water, but also it really resonated with that giving back. So being able to take what you do and then give back to your community. All along, what I didn't really think about, because, and I say this because I know others, would talk about that, was what do I want, from a career perspective? What is it that I want to be, So do I want to be the president of a company? Do I want to be a manager? Do I want to be this technical expert? And I guess I looked around. The only one his name was Jim. He was a senior engineer, plant manager at this company. And the part that I was so intrigued was he knew everything about that mill. And I remember even people would talk about that, like whatever question you had on whatever process, whatever system, he knew the answer. And I remember the one time thinking, ooh, I want to be like that. I want to know those ins and outs. But I would always say, I don't want to be the big boss. I don't need that. But when I'd say that, I also kind of felt like I was somewhat not wanting to be successful. It was, as part of that. It's like, well, if I don't say that I want that big title, and all this money, then I'm saying that it's okay. I don't need to be successful, And I don't think I really thought much of it, but that's sort of how I felt. Now, part of that was because I really still wanted to have a family. I wanted to have kids. I wanted to have a family, and I didn't really think how that worked. Well, if I'm going to focus and have a family, then I that's what I want to do. So I'm not going to be the leader in the company, and that's okay, because I really want to have my family. You hear a lot of people talk about, I want to be successful, and the success path, and how do I get there? But one of the critical pieces to that, because I think it's a combination. I think companies have to be part of that, but I think individuals have to be part of that. But you also need to know, what do you want? What does success mean to you? When you're 20 and you come up with what success means for you, when you're 30, it may not mean the same thing, and that's okay. And when you're 40, it may not mean the same thing, because life is going to change. Life will never stay the same. How you think life is going to turn out probably will not happen the way you think it is, but it can be far more wonderful than you thought it could be. So, which means that you have to change your perspective as time goes on, and you have to be ready to kind of change your path a bit as opportunities come up. So I finished my bachelor's and finished my master's. I looked for work. I had done my schooling in wastewater treatment. So it was chemical engineering, environmental engineering. It was focused on water treatment, wastewater treatment. And then I go look for a job. And guess what? You can't find jobs exactly in what you want to do, and exactly where you want to be, and exactly for all the money you think you're going to make when you graduate from school. And I got on to a firm, RWDI. It was all doing air dispersion modeling. I had to learn what was there, so I did. And it was actually one of the favorite jobs I had, because I like learning about stuff, and this job enabled me to work in a variety of different plants and places and different processes, and so I had to learn about all the different processes to figure out air dispersion. Being there, I had started working. I was young, I was married, and we wanted kids. And I didn't want to wait till later in life. I wanted to have kids young, and at this point I was 25, but I had just started my first job. How do you do that? How do you go to a job and then think about having kids? I didn't know. I'd never been in that position before. Not long after that, I was pregnant, found myself pregnant with our first child, and I had to then tell them, which is scary. And so anyone that's gone through that knows that, well, you're supposed to wait 3 months, but then you wait 3 months, and then you feel like you're at work and you don't want to tell people, but people are asking you, questions about future, and you don't know what to say, and it can be a very uncomfortable situation. But anyway, I eventually obviously had to tell them, and they were fine. They all had young kids, and we're still in the process of having kids, which helped a lot. So they understood. And so I eventually, after working there for a little over a year, so I went on mat leave, and I spent the year on mat leave. Take time to get to know the people you work with, the people around you. I think it's really important to understand their stories. I think it's really important to understand, what goes on in their lives, because it frames up the interactions you have. When you start to get to know more about people's lives, it changes how you interact with them. You become more empathetic to them. And by no means am I using that as an excuse. I never think that there's an excuse for something, but there's certainly an awareness and a story behind where people are at in any given day. And I think that's really important to understand. And shortly before my mat leave was up, I ended up getting a job with CBCL in our Halifax office. They paid, moved us all back to Halifax. So I've got my daughter who just turned 1, and we moved back, and I start this job, brand new place. And 2 weeks later, found out I was pregnant. And so again, very stressed. I don't know these people at all. They look at my resume and they see I worked for a year and I went on mat leave, and now I came back. And now they've moved me across the country, and I'm going to have a baby. And so again, I'm waiting the 3 months, but the entire time just feeling, oh my gosh, how do you do that? And so eventually, after the 3 months was up, and then I went in to talk to Andrew, and he laughed. And he was like, how old's your first? Whew, good luck with that. And you know what? And all we talked about were kids. He had a couple of kids. He didn't, when I talked about the job, he said, yeah, it'll be there for you when you get back. Like, so what? And it meant the world to me, because I had been so tense and so scared to tell him, because I felt like I let people down. I felt like I let people down doing something that I really wanted to do. And I was so excited, so excited to be a mom, so excited, for kids, but at the same time, I felt like I was letting the employer down. I worked there for a little under a year. I went on mat leave, and halfway through that mat leave, I found I was pregnant again. So now, that was the full-on, oh my gosh, I don't even know how I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna have 3 kids, 3 and under. Do I work? Can I work? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I had some really great leaders in my life that would not go fix my problems for me and would say, I'm not going to fix that for you. You want to avoid that discussion, and if you really don't want to have it, then I will go do that for you. But you will go a lot further if you go and you figure out how to deal with that yourself. And so they always, with support, they were always there to back me up. Versatility, I see as a huge asset because, like I said before, life never goes the way we think it should. There's always bumps in the road that come up. There's always people that change. We never know how things are going to go. The old saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I think there's a lot of truth to that. And when you're perceived to be versatile, that again, makes you more approachable. That people then can talk to you about a variety of different things. And I think approachability is a very, very big thing when it comes to leadership. When my youngest was born, my oldest had just turned 3, so it was a little bit of a whirlwind. And I didn't, at that point I thought, well, I'll probably take some time off. But after my youngest was a little over 1, I contemplated, would there be any possible way to work part-time? From a long-term point of view, I knew I wanted to go back to work, and I thought if I could just work a little bit to kind of keep myself in the industry just enough, then eventually, as my kids get older, then I can go back. So for the next 6-7 years, even though I thought I'd go back to work full-time when the kids were at school, lo and behold, life just gets even busier when kids go into school. And so I worked a little bit more hours. I kind of moved to a 30-hour a week, and everybody was very supportive. But I did that for years. And 2013, as the kids were getting a bit older, you start to think, then I started to it's sort of like the career parts, now starting to get a little bit stronger in my view, as I can think more about it. CBCL is a multidisciplinary engineering firm, so we have all different types of engineers. We service a variety of different markets, and we're employee-owned. Because I was part-time, no one part-time had ever been offered to be a shareholder before. So again, it wasn't something that I really thought was possible, and I knew that, but I wanted to be part-time. And so I was quite surprised when I found out, and I got a call from the chairman of the board who said, we want to make you an offer to be a shareholder in the company. But I had found out that in the history of the company, there were never directors on the board that were female. Engineering has been a male-dominated environment for a long, long time. Our company definitely recognizes and has for years that we want to, increase the gender profile of the company. And it's easier said than done, especially when you start with men trying to increase the, population and demographics, and not just of women, but of any diverse perspective, because it's so much easier to hire like for like, even without even thinking about it. It's the openness to talking with different people that now they don't think success looks just one way. And I think from a diversity point of view too, it's the same thing. If we come in and we only see one type of success, then we feel like that's what we need to be. And so when you come in and you now see that success takes all different shapes and sizes, then now you know that maybe you can create your own path to success. And so, at that time I thought, I want that. I want to be on the board. How come if I can come work part-time and then I can be a shareholder and I can manage these projects, maybe I can do that. So I just always had my eyes set on it. In 2017, I thought, okay, this is it. I'm going to put my name forward. I talked to some people. How do I do this? What do I do? And I was very nervous, and so I wrote up. I did some research on it, and I wrote up, a piece and did all that. And there's only 4 people elected that year. They go 4 to 5 every year. So we get to the AGM and we vote, and I lose. I was like, okay, that's okay. That's okay. That's all right. So even though I lost, I felt like I had won in so many ways. I all of a sudden felt empowered that it didn't matter that I lost. I still made the effort and I still put my name forward, and now maybe other people will put their name forward. And hey, I lost. So if they lose, then they know that's okay to lose too. Nothing happens overnight. And so, you have to find the balance between being patient with it. Try not to get too frustrated that things aren't happening as fast as you think they should. But be persistent with it. It doesn't mean that you give up. You have to keep persisting. You have to keep pushing it, but do it with some patience. The more I work with people, the more I'm in rooms, and whether it's myself or whether I see other people, sometimes I kind of find, if you're too pushy, you can become noise. But if you're too quiet, then nothing happens. Watch for opportunities. Do not expect them to fall in your lap. But just know that opportunities don't always look the way you think an opportunity should look like. Be ready to jump on anything that happens to come up. Anyway, I didn't end up putting my name for it the next year just because I was really busy with some project works. But the following year in 2019, I put my name for it again. And that's when I found out that year, and they went through the elections, and that I was elected to the board of directors. And so that was pretty monumental for me, for the company. The biggest thing I think for me of talking about success has become the moment that I realized that people are looking to me as an example in a senior position of what they can do. Those big opportunities, like, okay, today we're going to pick the person to manage the $2.3 million job, that doesn't just happen overnight. It happens because you've built relationships with people and you've proven yourself. And when you spend time organizing a lunch and it runs like, no problem, and then people say, oh, wow, hey, that's somebody we can count on. That's somebody that knows how to organize stuff. And then when they're looking for, another task to be done, they know that they can count on you. When I go to work with people, when I think about who are the people I like to work with, good communicators, people that reply to my emails, not because they reply to my email within 2 seconds and give me the answer, but because I know within 24 hours, I'm going to get an email back or a phone call back and say, hey, I got your message. I can't do that right now, but I am free next week, and this is when I'll get to it. Great. You've managed my expectations. So communicate. So those are the people I talk to. The people that are honest with me, don't tell me what I want to hear. Tell me what's the truth. Be somebody's cheerleader. Always give credit when credit is due. If you're working on something and you're presenting somewhere and somebody helped you get there, make note of their name. Talk about people, get people the credit. It will go so far. People remember that. It's something that sticks with people, that later on, that you've made a little positive note in their day, and they'll remember that. Successful people show up and they do their best. So we look at everybody on these pedestals and we think that, well, they're perfect. They can do all these things, but you know what? No one's perfect. Everyone has flaws. The more you get to know people, the more you realize nothing came easy. You had to work for it, but that anyone can do it. In CBCL, where there has always been a history of more men, again, demographically, that's what's out there. And in, I think it was 2013-14, we hired a female CFO, Tara. We had a shareholders meeting and an AGM, and Tara got up and spoke. And she was so calm and welcoming. And when people asked questions, there was no defensiveness. She never did take anything as, oh, I don't know that, and so there, get her back up. Everything was, oh, okay, good questions, and she'd take time and work to explain the answer. And if it got to a point where, that wasn't what they were looking for, she'd say, okay, no problem, and I'll come and get back to you. And there was this whole new feel to having her perspective up there. It's something that I see, I think, a lot more often with female leaders. I don't find there's the defensiveness that comes on maybe as much. I don't know whether it's at a basic level, women aren't as afraid to be vulnerable because society really tells men they are not allowed to be vulnerable. Men need to be tough. I think it's more acceptable for a woman to be vulnerable. And so I think you see a little more empathy with women when they're in those positions, and you're not as afraid to talk to them. It's so comforting when I see vulnerability in people around me and in leaders. I know when I see that vulnerability in leaders. When I hear leaders say, I probably could have done that better, that goes a long way. It increases my respect for them, and then also makes me feel more validated and more comfortable so that I can be who I want to be, and know that this bar isn't something completely unattainable, that we can all get there.
I don't know about you, but I am excited to continue this conversation with Amy. So find that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, get ready with your questions, and stay tuned.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much to Amy for sharing your very powerful story. It's been wonderful throughout the Persist series. We're on our 5th episode right now, how we've had such a variety of people sharing such interesting different stories. So really grateful for those who've been along the journey with us. We're also really excited to be having 2 other people join. My name is Vanessa Raponi, didn't mention. I will be your moderator for today, and I've been moderating the last 5 episodes as well. I'm a product development engineer at Spin Master, where I actually design and manufacture toys, including Paw Patrol, which most parents usually have heard of these days. And I also founded Engineers Canada, which is an LGBTQ engineering organization. So yeah, Victoria and Annie, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll pass it over to Amy?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone. Well, my name is Victoria Fernandez. I am originally from Venezuela. I did a master's degree in the US and at Rutgers University, and joined CBCL almost 10 years ago. My husband and I moved to Halifax. I work as a water resources engineer and a coastal engineer. So I do a lot of flood mapping studies and design for coastal infrastructure, a lot of computer modeling. I do project management, and I'm also a co-founder of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee Ideas in CBCL.
Wonderful. Thank you, Victoria, for introducing yourself. And Annie?
Hey everyone, and I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming today. My name is Annie Cormier, and I recently started full-time as a junior environmental engineer in training with CBCL Limited in the St. John office. Since I'm a recent graduate of Dalhousie University, I'm here to offer a fresh perspective in the engineering industry.
Wonderful. Love having those different perspectives. And Amy, the star of our show, how did it feel watching all that back?
You know what, Vanessa, this has been a truly humbling experience. Before I get going, though, one thing that Annie and Victoria and I talked about is, we wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land before we continue on. So in general, the importance of the land that we call home from coast to coast in Canada, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this nation home. Personally, I'm here in St. John, New Brunswick, which is the traditional unceded land of the Wolastoqey and the Mi'kmaq people. Just to continue on with that, I think we'd be remiss to not mention the tragic findings from last week with the grave of the 215 children that were found. And, we know there's a lot more out there to learn. And so we just wanted to recognize, that tragedy, as well as others that lost their lives and suffered through the residential schools, and not, I don't want to focus too much on the negative, but, also be remiss that there's another tragedy in London, Ontario this past week in the Muslim community. So, all this being said, I think this conversation on diversity is extremely important. We want to respect the diversity that makes, our companies, our communities, our country, the best place to live and work, eat and play, and of course raise our families. So really excited to have these discussions, that this isn't the only one, and hopefully hopefully that people continue these discussions in their own offices. But thank you for having me. Back to your question of how do I feel watching myself? It's really humbling. We've had these conversations before, and and I've had a lot of conversations with folks that I've worked with, is that, carrying that kind of, why me? What do I bring? I feel like I've had a great life. I've learned a lot. I've had the benefit. I grew up in a very wonderful family, loving family, both immediate and extended family. And I have wonderful friends, some of whom, I've gone to school with, and I look and I say, why me? And I laugh, because when I've talked to some others, and Annie and Victoria, I'm really happy that they're joining me today, and there's a few others that we've chatted about, and there's some other folks too that also kind of had the, I couldn't do that, I haven't done anything to present, and I look at them and I'm like, oh my goodness, you've done so much. You've brought us so far. So I really, truly, when you look at I think everybody has something to offer. And so I think this is a great platform to be able to listen to the stories. And I've certainly enjoyed all the other episodes that I've listened to with some of the women. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Amy. Really appreciate those acknowledgements. And it's always good in these platforms and situations to bring up these types of difficult topics. And, speaking about women being very adaptable and all these different challenges that we face, it's amazing for the audience. If you're wondering, Annie and Amy actually just experienced a power outage a few minutes ago and have figured out a way to continue going on with the show. So I think that women in engineering, when it comes to our versatility, is truly incredible. And, a few things definitely stuck out to me as we were watching your video, and Amy. I think this kind of family work balance, we hear work-life balance a lot, but that looks very different for everybody, but really just this concept of family. So I'm curious to start off with some of the Q&A. How have you felt about people responding to how you spend your time with your children versus work? Have you ever had people be overly critical or in your space, or have you found people in your environment, people have been very understanding and respectful?
Yeah, so I guess there's two sides of that. From the work perspective, I've been very fortunate. So when I talk about having the opportunity to work part-time, I didn't even know what that looked like. So John Flowing, who was the manager of the office, when I approached him, I was fortunate that he had kids. He understood the demands on there. And so we just sort of worked through what part-time looked like. But it wasn't just him. The whole office was very good in understanding, and a lot of them had kids. So a lot of them understood, when you have to leave to go to doctor's appointments constantly, and, all of a sudden kids play hockey, and for some reason the young kids, their hockey starts at 3:30 in the afternoon. And you look around, you say, I don't understand how people are working and they're still managing to do these activities. And so, everybody at work understood that. And then, we just all worked together. So they were all very respectful of that. I never felt, it wasn't any one person. It was kind of this whole office that supported it. So that was a good thing. And then on the flip side, outside of work, to be flexible when you're out in the community, you're out with the kids, then you're also still got your ear a little bit to work. And I didn't really feel anything from anyone, and if anything, it's your own guilt. I mean, anybody that has kids know that it's nothing but guilt. It's pure joy and a whole pile of guilt that you're, never feel like you're doing all the right things. And so, I carry my own guilt of now I'm with kids, but now I feel like I'm not working enough and struggling with that balance. But at the end of the day, anytime I thought, oh, I'm at the playground or I'm checking on something, everybody else is just like, I get it. I think everyone else is in the same boat. Everyone else is trying to figure out that balance and how to make it work. And so I find there's far more support out there than negativity.
That's wonderful. And I'm grateful to hear that. And Annie and Victoria, have you observed the same kind of thing in your office environment?
Well, I actually became a mom 2 years ago. So it's going to be almost about a year since I returned, and it coincided with the pandemic and the whole work from home. So my personal experience is that my need or my new life as a mom and as a professional coincided with a situation that required a lot of empathy.
Right.
So, and I think that that's also, that will be a factor that will help to improve things. It's empathy, and the empathy that comes also from people living a similar experience like you. So parents, dads, men in the Western, in our country, have been more and more involved with kids.
Right.
So they understand now more, or they have lived in their own flesh what it means to have to take care of your kids when they are sick. So I think that, you know, there is an evolution, and in that evolution and that understanding comes from the conceptual part of things of, yeah, we're all equals, we all deserve similar opportunities, but also comes from shared experiences and living things in your own flesh that allows you to be empathic.
100%. Yeah, I think COVID has really changed the game for all of us, seeing men with babies in their lap in work meetings, and all of us being more comfortable with flexible hours, and employers being more comfortable with it. So for sure. And Annie, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I don't have any children yet, of course, but it's like Amy said, there's a lot of people in this office that do have kids, and a lot of people that share stories a lot about their kids. And it's just very encouraging to know that when I get to that point in my life, there's people that will understand what I would be going through, and people that I can rely on for advice to try to find that work kid balance.
Fantastic. Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that we're sharing the same sentiment from different perspectives. All right, the audience has sent us in a lot of questions, so let's dive into those. First and foremost, how do you approach management about pay raises and being paid equal to other genders in the same role? Classic salary negotiation question. Any words of wisdom to pass around?
I can start, but I'll love to hear Victoria and Annie's perspective. That's a difficult discussion for anyone. You know, well, I think it would be a difficult discussion because, you know, you have to figure out, first of all, you have to develop the confidence to feel that there's a differentiator in pay from where you're at to where you think you should be. You know, basic advice for anything you do a little bit of research ahead of time. You know, go out and look and see. ACC in Canada, say in the consulting world, does surveys. The different provinces do surveys. So there is information out there in terms of salary surveys to go and understand, you know, what your applicable role is. So, you know, do your research. Certainly back it up with why you feel like you should be at a certain spot. If you're concerned about a gender, you know, inequality in gender pay, which is definitely out there, you know, I mean, we see those reports that come out that's definitely out there. You know, I think you need to push your employer to do their own digging and to take a look at what people are paid across the company, and you know, and push and ask to determine if there is an overall gender inequality in terms of if there is a wage gap. You know, obviously you can't fix it all, but you know, you've got to be able to do the best you can. So doing the research, figuring out, you know, where you stand, what you bring, and go present that. And you know, also, and I said this, like this whole patiently persistent, you know, if it doesn't happen the first time, you know, don't be afraid to address it again. You know, maybe not do it every single day, but you know, but keep at it, keep bringing information, keep supporting that, because if there is something out there, you're not just talking and looking at that for yourself, then you're also looking at it potentially for others that may not be as confident in their voice to go ask those questions.
Definitely. And I do think if there's concern about a gender wage gap, that's like a bigger, broader HR discussion versus general salary negotiation. I think that's something more everybody goes through versus like a systemic issue. Victoria, anything to add?
Yeah, well, it would be if we had a lot of time and I was facing this person face to face. I would ask what makes the conversation challenging. Is the conversation challenging because you're thinking about a salary raise or from your own point of view, and something's making you believe that there is a difference that has to do with gender. And if that's the case, then just like Amy was saying, research will be very important because it helps to make everything about merits and about performance and about what's the value generally from the market point of view of your work. If the conversation becomes difficult because you don't know how to approach it, you might not necessarily believe that you deserve a certain rate, then a certain wage, then um, working in your confidence and really believing that you deserve that raise or deserve that compensation, it's really important. And like you were saying, if it's something that is systemic, sorry, in your company, then in CBCL, one thing that we did, we as part of the initiative of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, we did it because we wanted to give employees a space of a way to advise management on practices they could do to encourage equity and diversity and inclusion. And one of the discussions has, for example, touched on, okay, why don't we look at how things are in terms of wage gaps, does that exist? So, the creation of a committee like this would provide a space for an initiative, for a corporate initiative, or something that is employee-led that might help address or encourage some internal research in the company, whether there is an issue or not.
100% employee resource groups are always invaluable to help show that difference. All right, this question is very interesting. So this is about people who do not have children, but still manage staff that do. What are some of the best or worst ways that managers can support and be inclusive to a working parent, whether based off experiences or things you've observed? Any feedback?
I still think whether it's employers, managers of people, whether it's with kids or any other thing in their lives, is take the time to get to know people. Understand what makes up their life. Understand what makes them tick. Understand, what makes them happy. Understand what stress causes them stress. And so for managers or people with kids. And if that manager doesn't have kids, then it might be on the surface hard to relate, but just make an effort to try to understand some of where the stresses come from. And I think none of us truly understand what each other goes through because we haven't lived that person's life. We also genetically aren't wired to feel the same way that other people feel. So what may cause me a lot of stress may not cause you a lot of stress, and vice versa. And so I think there's just an awareness from a manager level to know that, okay, I don't know exactly how you feel, but I'm going to make an effort to try to understand it. And being there for support, to know that, that the support's there and there's some options available. I think for managers too, being able to reinsure some employees sometimes on a longer scale, just provide some comfort of, look, you're having a really difficult time right now, and you're really focused on this moment, but we gotcha. You're good. Like
reassurance.
If this goes on for 3 years, maybe we need to talk about it, but just some reassurance and try to help the employee know that, it's coming. I mean, when I had 3 kids, 3 and under, I figured a career was non-existent, and now many years later, I have a great career, and, you know, a great balance. And I have my family, but in the moment I would have thought, oh, I'm never gonna get there and I'm never gonna do it, but time will help. So I think as a manager, just being able to reassure the employee, just helping them look a little bit longer term, and then just being there to not cause any other stress on them on that particular day, especially because people with young kids that probably aren't sleeping at all. And
maybe they're struggling a little bit
it can be very stressful. Yeah.
Definitely. Victoria, any feedback?
Yeah, there are a couple of things. Yeah, from the human side of point of view or connection point of view, having curiosity and an open mind and non-judgmental approach to any conversation about that, it's key. But that takes a lot of work, and that doesn't only apply, it applies for every aspect on life and human relationships. So that's like the ultimate goal from for to create a better world in general. But there is tons of resources in the internet that at least allows you to, implement some best practices. Engineers Canada, for example, just put together a set of a guideline for transitioning before, during, and after maternity leave. So that at least provides a series of checklists and of points to consider for you as the employee who is leaving, and for the manager as well, to help with that transition. It is the other thing that I think it would be important is to start normalizing that conversation. We also come from this general approach of having to show a brave face, and it goes to what Amy was saying during the video: vulnerability. So we always we want people to trust us, and there is sometimes the fear that if I say that I cannot I cannot focus on this meeting because I haven't slept, then people are going to stop trusting me. But if we normalize the conversation, and we all know that we're all going through the same thing, moms, dads, and parents, doesn't matter, then I think that will help a lot.
100%. Yeah, no, I think, and at the end of the day, I think there's just going back to the human element of this, whether it's children, whether it's, having, taking care of an elderly parent, like everyone's going through something. And as a manager, it's always going to be helpful for you to be having these thoughtful, open discussions with your employees and seeing just what support they need, regardless of what situation they're in. I think this question will be great for maybe Amy and Annie. So this is a question on behalf of someone who feels they're a bit more introverted. So when you're in situations that are often male dominated, such as business planning meetings, how do you find that you're able to get yourself noticed and provide meaningful input in those discussions? Amy, you want to start off, and then Annie can add too?
Yeah, for sure. So anybody that knows me today will say that I am not introverted at all. But that's not the way I was, 15 years ago. I was a lot more quiet 20 years ago. I will be honest, a lot longer ago. When I started off, I didn't have as much confidence. I was much more quiet. I would also be very quick that, even if I had the courage to speak up and say something, as soon as someone said something, I almost like cower back, like I wasn't saying the right thing. And so it took me a long time to get to a point where now I have a lot more confidence. And I give a lot of credit to, again, the people that I work with who have helped build my confidence. And so they, I look a lot at that skill set, and I'd like, to try to give that back to people. But I think there's things. One, no one in the room knows everything, no matter how much they talk. They don't. Time, it helps because you start to realize other people make mistakes. Other people say things that, aren't 100% correct. And so, I think those things, it's awful, but it gives you more confidence when you see other people mess up, because then it's okay for me to mess up too.
Totally.
So I think those things, but that's hard because that takes time. I think trying to, again, patiently persistent, like if you have something you think it's important to say it. Listen to what other people say. If you don't feel they're hearing you, say it again. And keep trying. You can't control other people, but you can do your best, and you can keep trying to put that forward, and you'll be recognized. I mean, I have a lot of respect. There's different people in my life and at work that are quite calming, and you know, to be honest, you hear more of what they say because they don't talk as much. So when they do talk, you know, everyone listens. So you know, there's a need for all different types of people, but I know a lot of introverted people that are very successful.
Definitely. Yeah, I have a few leaders as well who they're the strong silent type, and it definitely gets the message across. Annie, what do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree with Amy. And I'm at a point in my career since I just started that when I'm in meetings, I'm a little bit more hesitant, especially since it's COVID and everything's online. It's harder to speak up, especially when you're sitting and video chatting with people. The biggest thing for me is I would say just listen, know how things are done, make sure you're learning, make sure you know what's going on. Keep minutes, I would say, because and maybe in the next meeting there was a detail that was forgotten, but you have a record of it, and then you can bring that to the table. And yeah, that's basically what
I find that really helpful for me too, because I'm much more of a visual person than an auditory person. So writing down notes for myself helps me remember in the next meeting too. So that's definitely a great tip. Amy, the interest in a certain part of your story. So you mentioned how you had 3 very close succession pregnancies. How was your partner's career impacted during that
time? Not very much. We moved in the midst of that, and so he switched jobs out of choice to move from different places, but we had made the decision that I would be the one to stay home. So I you know, took the main part of the, you know, the maternity leave, took the year for both times. You know, that was the decision we made, and I was perfectly happy with that. You know, I wanted to be there with the kids. So in that situation, there wasn't an impact other than sleepless nights for
right.
kids that that didn't sleep. Yeah.
Well, and I think these days, you know, there's so many different ways parents address this, and some parents, you know, are adopting or having surrogate pregnancies that, you know, the male partner might take much longer, or if it's 2 men or whatever, you know, like it might, parental leave, I think, increasingly looks different in time. And it seems like it's just always a balancing act of whose careers doing what at what stage, and the conversations you're having with your partners. All right. This next one is perfectly on theme with today's session. And this is a question about how has your definition of success changed after starting a family? And do you foresee it changing again in the future? Amy and Victoria, any thoughts on that? Do you want Victoria maybe to go first for this one?
Yeah, go ahead, Victoria. Yeah.
We happened to talk about that in conversations previous to that. Then I said that right now my definition of success is having a shower, having time to have a shower. So it definitely, in my case right now, it did. It's being able to, success for me at the moment, it's being able to have time to think.
Right.
And it's all around my kids' wellness. So that definitely became a priority. So before, success used to be more about, you know, being in the know with everything. Don't let any opportunity pass, you know, be ready for jumping on everything. But now I have to learn to say no and really, really focus on when I can, what I have, what's aligned with my career goals, and what I want to do, for example, in building with nature, which is one of the areas that I want to in climate change adaptation. So it's now all about that, mainly about that. If something is not that connected, then I'll delegate more. So learning to delegate is also part of my new definition of success. That might change over time. I don't know, but that's my present.
It seems like when there's different demands on your time, you're forced to kind of reevaluate where do you want to spend every minute? Because time is so valuable. And Amy, what have you found?
Yeah, I definitely do. And that's one thing, this whole success discussion that I've had more and more in the last few years is almost is my own self-realization of what does it mean to be successful? You know, what does it mean? And I think society early on, that's where, you know, society says if you paint the picture of success, it's this, you know, I hate to say, it's this gray hair man in a suit that has lots of money and lots of stuff. And, you know, so when you don't think about it, it's like, oh, that's success. It's that title. But, you know, the older you get, you go, no, like for success, I want to be happy. I want to be comfortable. You know, what are the priorities in my life? For me, it's family, it's my kids, it's being able to have time with them. I don't want to live a life where I have a lot of regrets. That doesn't mean that, you know, my life is anywhere near perfect and I don't have conflicting priorities, you know, all the time, but it helps to ground me a bit sometimes when I go, okay, well, what is it I want? You know, what truly is it I want? Do I want to travel? Do I, you know, want to do a certain activity? Are there things at work that I want to work on more? You know, what is my definition of success for me? And my definition of success isn't what the person next to me's definition is. And there's just a comfort that it brings to, it just kind of relieves a lot of pressure to go, okay, I don't have to be that image, mainly because I don't want to be. You know, I think we're all capable of a lot, but I don't want to be. So, but I think, you know, I think that was just something that I became, you know, more comforted by once I decided what I wanted for success.
Yeah, Victoria.
One thing that I wanted to also add to what Amy was saying is it's definitely that the definition of success, it's becoming more, I hope with time it's becoming more wider outside of that stereotype that they have always sold us. And I think that it's happening with many aspects. It's also the definition of beauty. What is beauty? It's a definition of what being a woman is like. Is it all about parenting? No, women have more layers. We just saw, for example, how Naomi Osaka just, I think, redefined what success looks like in the sport world, and all the backup that she had for acknowledging her struggle with anxiety and depression in such an important tournament and people backing her up. So to me, that's success. You are able to be vulnerable and people back you up and you just change this conversation. So most definitely, there is a success can look like different ways and there is a change.
100%. There will always be evolution. All right, so this is going to be our last question, and this has also been a recurring theme throughout the series, is about mentorship. So what tips and resources do you recommend for learning how to delegate and mentor other women and junior engineers as you progress into more leadership roles? Or for Annie, what preferences for when you're being mentored and having tasks sent? Annie, do you maybe want to kick off with this and then we'll go around?
Sure, yeah. I would say the big thing is for young engineers or women in engineering to go visit high schools, because that was one memory I had of high school when Amy and another engineer from our office came and visited my high school and talked about engineering, and it really encouraged me to go forward with my career. And same with looking for summer jobs. I really think there should be more promotion for students after their first year, say, to go out and get summer jobs with consulting firms or anywhere in the engineering industry. And I really think it's good to have women in the office and around you, and it really encourages me to be able to talk to women that may have gone through the same things as me.
100%. Yeah, definitely trying to lean into that representation and getting exposure to different opportunities. I love it. Amy and Victoria, any thoughts? People looking to mentor, looking to delegate?
Yeah, I like, again, I've been very fortunate. I've had some amazing mentors, John being one of them, who I've learned a lot from. and about, just watching him work. Doug Brownrick, another one, sadly we lost him a couple of years ago, and he is everyone's favorite mentor, a very calming influence. And so to act as a mentor, I usually reach and think about my mentors. One of the things that's very endearing, I find, even with my mentors, is when I hear them talk about their mentors. And, you know, some of those traits that they always saw as so comforting. Doug was really good. I always used to say I'd call Doug with a problem, you know, a technical problem. We talked about water systems a lot, and I'd call him and I'd say, okay, I think I figured it out. I think this is what I want to do. And he'd say, oh yeah, absolutely. And we'd talk it through. We'd have this whole conversation. I'd leave feeling so empowered that I'm so smart. And then I, you know, later get off the phone realizing that he kind of somehow switched the entire answer around, but somehow made it feel like I did it. And so it was just this, he just had this quality, you loved working with him. He was so approachable. So, you know, all of those traits from my mentors are things now that I, you know, would like to encourage others, you know, so that approachability, picking up the phone when someone calls, you know, being there to listen, you know, offering to help. One thing I've been trying to do more, offering to help in the way that the person wants the help. You know, try not to doing it for them, you know, but if they're having an issue, you know, try not to fight their battles, encourage them, you know, but be there for them, have their back. So, you know, so from a mentor perspective, you know, there's a lot I've learned and can share of it all because of the people that I've been around.
100%. Victoria, have you found mentorship valuable in your career?
Absolutely. And one thing I wanted to point out is that, you know, mentor doesn't have to be just one person. You can have different mentors for different aspects of your life. For example, Doug, which was the same person she was talking about. One thing that I learned from him was that humility and that vulnerability. He would accept his mistakes like really easy. So that's something I wanted to learn from. I had other mentors. Being an immigrant to Canada, I wanted to fit in, and that's a complex discussion, but I just wanted to kind of see how people would speak. So there was an engineer, and I really like how he paused when he spoke and was clear on his ideas. So, you know, he didn't know he was mentoring me, but I was totally trying to copy his style because I felt that he was a good communicator. So sometimes they are mentors that they don't know that they are. Sometimes you go and create a mentorship, you know, based on gut feeling. I really like this person, and maybe they teach you, maybe they don't, maybe then it happens, like could be compatibility or not. So there is no one single rule.
Totally.
It's also about what are you looking for? I think that's the first question. What are you looking for to learn? You know, skills, goals, life perspective. So.
100%. Well, we have actually run out of time. So what we really hope that you will all take away from this is that we all recognize that being a woman in engineering has its challenges, and there's people in various stages of their career who are still fighting the good fight of making sure inclusion is progressing. That being, you know, some of the messages we've heard here about vulnerability and authenticity and just being candid with your own experiences and sharing them with others, and asking other people what they need as well. Hope that you'll all take that away. So thank you so much to Amy, Annie, and Victoria. We appreciate it so much for your time. And on behalf of the Discovery and Do-Goodery team, we just want to share with the overall audience that we're actually going to be taking a break for a couple months. So this is a series that's running all throughout the year, but we know that summertime is pretty wild for everybody. So enjoy your July and August with your family and friends, and we'll see you again in September. We do have some short surveys for you that you could fill out if you go to tinyurl.com/persist June 2021, and you can see general updates of the series on discovery.org/persist. Yes, and thank you so much, Jen Marie. If anyone's interested in staying connected with me on YouTube, you can follow me here at this link. So thank you so much, everybody, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.